there's a million metaphors inside of why, you know, there's a lot that I've learned moving back home to Nashville. Like, I'm from here, but I never thought of myself as somebody who would move back to my like small town. And Nashville is like, not necessarily a small town, but compared to New York and LA, Nashville is definitely a small town. And then having the farm just outside of Nashville, like there's a lot I'm learning about seasons and cycles and, patience. And, I joke because most people these are the only reference that people get is that my life is like Schitt's Creek right now because I moved back home knowing nothing about what that would be like. And I know nothing about farming, but my husband, Gabe, is the Patrick of the relationship and he knows a lot about it. And I stand there and sing songs and feel cute and do my best.
So he grew up farming and you didn't?
No, he just grew up in a different kind of world. I mean, besides, I've talked about that he grew up in a really religious community, but he, his family was like really into like plants and gardening and stuff like that. And his dad is in construction. So Gabe just grew up doing more things like with tools and like, he has real skills that can actually be helpful in life. And I have like, I can sing songs, I don't know. Like he didn't grow up in a farming world, but he grew up, loving that stuff. And his sister also has a farm. And so like, there's like a shared language there. And, like I mentioned with the bees, like I've definitely rolled up my sleeves and learned more things than I thought were possible.
It seems like it would be an overwhelming thing to take on at first. Like that's a big jump, right? It's a big leap to take in life to suddenly be a farmer.
I mean, I think there's a million metaphors in there too. Like I think life is allowed to surprise you, and I think there are moments where I will be cleaning out the gutters with my husband and I'll be like, my day is so wild. Or here's a great example. Like a couple weeks ago, I did a symphony show in DC. Maybe it was DC or Florida. I can't remember where I was, but I did a symphony show where I'm singing the entire Carole King album from front to back with the symphony, magical. And the next day I'm flying back to Nashville and I'm getting pawpaw from our farm and I'm selling it to a bakery in East Nashville, and I was like, that is like an amazing 24-hour lifespan to have, and it feels like better than any other time in my life.
Carole King was like, she's a city person, but somehow I feel like she would approve of that.
No, she's moved to the mountains. I mean, she's
has she? Okay.
I think there's like, the thing is, I'm such a fan of artists like Carole King and Patti Smith, and I read a lot of like autobiographies and I read a lot of Patti Smith's books. And I remember one time when I was living in New York and I heard Patti Smith say like, New York is dead, move to Detroit. And I think there's like, I have wonderful friends in New York. I have wonderful friends in LA. In some ways, I left the people I loved and started a new life back home, which I should have like listened to my own song from years ago and just been like, go back home. The song already told you to do that. But I just think there's something magical about slowing down and living life. And that's Heartland to me.
Queens. I was in Astoria for the last 20 years. And in July of last year, I moved about 2 hours. I'm in the Hudson Valley now, which, is its own big change. I mean, I'm in a town of like 2,000 people right now. And there's, there's definitely a big part of me. This is, there's a big part of me that when I first moved and was acclimating and was really enjoying it here, where I was constantly asking myself why I didn't do it sooner. But in hindsight, like I don't think I was ready. I don't think I was ready to make that jump. I think there was still something left for me in the city. And it sounds like for you, I mean, obviously you had your friends, but even like professionally and everything else, like there was still something for you in LA. So maybe the time wasn't quite right to make that move.
Yeah, but I hear you, I see you, and like what that brings up for my story is like I was so scared to leave one of those major cities to come somewhere else. And what I have found is more support and more. I signed a record deal and got more things that um I thought I was searching for while in those bigger cities, and I found it in a different way, in a different place, in a life that reflects more beauty than ever before, So like there's something about the internet that divides and conquers and feels terrible sometimes, but then there's also like you don't have to be in the same place that you think you're supposed to be to do life, and not just politically. There's something about people from major cities going back to other areas and being a part of making communities better and stronger that, when we found out that they were not going to be able to have pride in our small town, we hosted the Pride Festival. And that, that's gritty. That's real. That is important and necessary. And as an artist, as a human being, as a queer person, um, these are the things that matter to me. And I'm getting to sing the songs that I meant to sing and live life. And I think that a lot of people can put things online to look cool these days, but I question whether they're actually living life. And that is that was my quest, that was my quest.
Were you living life in LA?
I think I was like searching for life, like it's funny how songs, like if we want to go by song, for me, in my first album, songs like Home and Carry the Weight were directly talking about finding home and carrying the weight. And then I released a song called Holy Water just before the pandemic, and was kind of like if Carry the Weight was you can carry the weight, Holy Water was you can let it go, And then the pandemic led to Wonder, where I was dropped by my label the same day that Billie Eilish tweeted about my song Home, inspiring her song Bad Guy. And my internet sort of went crazy. And I'm like, what is the trappings of a label and what does this even mean? And here's a song Wonder and I love it. And then that had 100 million streams in a month and it went viral everywhere. And I did a version with Sarah Bareilles and I did it on TV. And in that moment of wondering what I'm doing in the middle of the pandemic, I moved back home thinking that it was over, and Beacon, the album that sort of bridged the gap between leaving LA and coming here, was based around the hero's journey, was like me, you know, on this quest to find something. And like every hero's journey, you end up back where you started. And then here I am at home. I meet a man, I fall in love, we buy a farm, I sign a record deal, and I'm like, I've made an album about coming back home and reclaiming home for myself. That's the like short story version of me through music. I think I was fully living life in LA, but I was like living for I was living for somebody else to tell me that I have value. And coming back home slash living at a different pace, I'm trying to embrace, I sound so crazy, whatever, but I'm trying to embrace the value within that is like inherent in every single human being on earth, you know? It's just that there is a charge to what I do now, because when I showed up back in Nashville, I had to show up to the Capitol because they were going to take away the rights of women. They were going to ban drag in public spaces. And then ultimately, the biggest moment was that they were going to do nothing about gun legislation in a town with a school shooting that rocked our community. And all we said was, don't take away the guns, but maybe, I don't know, add a background check. And they did nothing, you know? And so people are like, you're an advocate, or you're an activist or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not an activist. I'm mad and I'm human. And everything I sing about is what it means to be human, you know? So I really get passionate about this because I think that my life has a lot more purpose having come back home. And thank you, Mom. You get it. You win. There you go. But coming back home, I should have taken my own advice long ago.
When you say you win to Mom, you mean just in terms of like geography, or the fact that you should return home?
No, I mean, not because, well, I don't think my mom is like a sorcerer, or maybe, who knows, but she definitely was like, you will have a better time with getting a place to live in Nashville for X amount of dollars versus Los Angeles for X amount of dollars, you know?
I don't think you have to be a wizard to figure that out.
You know, yeah, but you do have to be open to it. And I was not. And I was hard-headed. And whatever I want to say about myself is sort of like, I wasn't ready. To your point, I wasn't ready. But I didn't think, because I had a manager tell me in 2011 that I would never make it in music as an openly gay person in Nashville. And the one thing I would never do is hide who I am, even though my roots run fucking deeper than most of the people in country music adjacent, whatever, in Nashville, Tennessee, because I'm a third generation Nashvilleian whose first job was at Tootsie's singing with the band and bartending. You know what I mean? But like, I also love men, so I'm not allowed, you know? But that was 2011, and this is 2025. And though there is only one openly gay artist in a duo on a major label in country music, well, I think there are probably two, but it's not my, you know, let me phrase this sweetly to everyone on their own journey. There's not enough representation of queer people on labels coming out of Nashville. And so it is a big deal for me to sign a deal out of Nashville, kind of out of a bridge between LA and Nashville, because there just needs more visibility for queer artists with teams in the music industry.
So it sounds like part of you really sort of during that period, obviously you were figuring out a lot at the same time. One of those things was whether you needed the infrastructure that being on a label, or certainly being on a major label, brought. The infrastructure, the relative stability. Obviously, you know, the music industry has, for better or for worse, mostly for the worse, has changed a lot over the past couple of decades. That you were able to see, you know, viral success even without the label support, but ultimately you did end up signing with a label, and you feel like a big piece of that is visibility.
Yeah, I think it's also like opportunity, and it's also like knowledge that I signed a deal that allows me to own my music forever, you know, that gives me support for the music that is mine forever, you know, that is in partnership with a team to help expand the reach, but again, maintains that I am the owner of the music forever. And that is like, you know, not just Taylor Swift having that reckoning with music right now, where while things have changed for, as you say, the worse, I would just say things have changed and they continue to change. And for worse or for better is not even the question I'm asking. As things shift, what is the role of teams in the modern music industry? And a lot of it is divide and conquer, and also make sure you own the music that you're sharing. Make sure you own the art that you make, It was important for me on this deal to find a team that would allow me to pay writers on the master share of the record. And as I know, fact check me, I'm the only, major, BMG is a major indie, but I'm the only, which has Jelly Roll and Lainey Wilson and major players like within the Nashville music scene. But I'm the only deal that is paying writers on the master share of records, and does it cut into my share? Of course. And does it matter to me? Of course. And would I like to be a bigger artist than I am? Yeah. But also, if you want to change the way that things happen, you have to try to be a part of that change, So I think that's important. I think that's a big deal. I think more people should do it. And I'm talking about it openly here and starting to talk about it because I didn't do it because it's a press point. Do you know what I mean? But I do think that it needs to be talked about more. And also, if you're hearing this, go stream my music a lot because you're changing the game. I just, posted a video just now before this interview about AI music, and people are like, oh, they'll know, people will know. And I'm like, I don't think they will. It's not because I think people are dumb. I do think it's because people don't care. And the question you have to ask yourself when you come across it is how much you care and how much you're going to listen to that this is a problem. And if you like an artist and like something that you see that is real, let artists know that, it matters. We have a pretty hurt culture. And it makes me sad, but I come to music because I love it and I care really deeply. And so in this journey of this album and in the press around it, I'm like, I wasn't even sure if I was going to talk about writers getting paid on the master because my internal anxiety was like, well, I'm nobody, who would care? But I think that if I can talk about it enough and more people hear that this is happening and more people ask their favorite artists, why aren't you doing this? I don't want to call people out, but why aren't you doing this? Then maybe that can shift something, because I can't tell you how many people I talk to that are like, wait, what? You're not getting paid millions of dollars when you have 1 million streams on a TikTok? And it's like, no, that's not how that works. And we didn't choose that, but I still care about making music that means something, so here I am.
A lot of my kind of cynicism when it comes to talking about the music industry specifically, in terms of social causes right now that I'm very, I would say involved with and very kind of obsessed over right now. It's really SNAP benefits right now. That's the thing that I'm focused on at the moment, right? It's really is feeding people and I can't help but see the parallels between the wealth gap in society and what's happened in the music industry in the way that there really isn't a middle class in the music industry the way that there used to be, and what can be done, and I think you're speaking to this a little bit, but what can be done to ensure that people can continue to make a living even if they're not Taylor Swift or Jelly Roll.
Yeah. You ask an amazing question that I wish I could solve for myself and every friend of mine who makes music, which is um, how do you support how do you support the dream of being a creator and going to talk to students, like how do you support the dream of being an artist in a society that feels like they don't care, you know? And um I don't I don't have the answer. And but when you were talking about that, what came up for me was thinking about farming, because in agriculture there's actually a ton of government support for farming and creation, USDA. I mean, it is a bit uh, presidential term specific, and we are currently in a part of lack of support. Um, but historically, there was a lot of support around farmers, whatever. With the politics of that are clear to me, and I don't need to get into them. But, you know, there's all these government programs for helping farmers create greenhouses to like increase their um, yield.
The growth season.
Yeah, even in like a winter season, which as a metaphor, like if you think about that for music, you wish that that was the case. It's not. We also like as a farm, we're young. We had this Pride Festival where we've planted 400 heads of garlic that head into winter now, and then like honey and maybe honey garlic, things that ultimately will go to pizza because that's kind of just what we love. But we do hope that we can be a farm that donates, what we create to food insecure populations, like because it's something that we can do to make the world better, and I'm not a saint or, know what I'm doing in so many ways, but like I want to make the world better around me. I am sad that there are so many shifts that are happening that are beyond our control that make the music industry an unsupportive place for like people who have a dream to make music. I am also sad about that in the world, For me though, I can either stop, never try, and be mad and sad, or I can do my best with what I have to try to make sure that the songwriters on my project feel like they are included in every part of the thing that succeeds. And maybe it's a new way. I remember I have a song called A New Way, and I remember when the head of the label that was on, he was like, I just think the song is like ahead of its time. And I'm like, man, that's sad, because I wish it had done better. But also, you know, maybe that's what songs are. They're like little messengers from another time. I'm thinking about right now, I'm sorry, a little different, but on part 2 of Heartland, there's a song called Migration, and I'm getting a little emotional because this is like the first week of interviews where normally my dog would be sitting in this chair. And I made this song Migration, and I wrote it, and I was like, this is about my dog passing, but like she was there and fine. And it's wild because the song was going to come out and then it was pushed because I signed this deal and whatever, and timing, who knows, but the song came out and the next week my dog passed. And you know, who knows what the music will do? I can't control it, but I do know that the music is genuine and real and meant to be made because I love it. That's about all I know. Everything else is just a mystery and um and something that I'm trying to do my best with what I have.
How old was she, if I can ask?
She was just like 12 and a half. But she's a boxer pit, and they said that the life expectancy was 10 to 12. And, I got 11 amazing years with her. And it's weird because she was a part of every single album I've made, this one included. Because I got her when I signed my first record deal, when I had like any amount of cash beyond what was the week to week experience. And she was with me through every album and every song I've made since, so it was weird as I was driving around with her, like in her last few days, and I was playing, wow, this is so emotional. I was playing all of my records and she was singing along as she did. And I'm just so grateful. Going back to how we first started, where nothing is forever and everything has a season, whether you want it to or not. In the words of me and Langhorne Slim, every beginning, there must be an end, But it was just the greatest dog, and a dog who taught me how to love more than I ever knew I needed to learn.
I asked specifically, how old, because I think that you were, it's obvious that you were anticipating, because we think about this as our pets get older, right?
Yeah.
And like I actually have 2 rabbits who live in the other room.
Aww.
And the question, when I tell people that, one of the first questions that comes up is like, oh, well, how old are they? And then how long do they live, right? It's not, it's just, it's not necessarily an insensitive question. It's just one of the first things that people think about. But it's very top of mind. And it sounds like this was your way of processing what you knew was going to be a traumatic event before it even happened.
Yeah, and it's hard to talk about it because it is so real, but that's also like it's also the beauty of love, like love is grief is proof of, love. You know what I mean? Like grief is the byproduct of loving somebody a lot, because my life would be less without the love that I had from my dog Stevie. And in so many ways, she got me to whatever this next chapter is. And I do believe that, like not that she like, she found Gabe, but like she definitely sniffed him out and was like, I like this one, because she saw enough street urchins to know that I made bad choices. And she was like, this is a good one. And at some point in my relationship with Gabe, my dog became Gabe's too. And that is the sweetest little memory.
But you were able to give her, I'm sure that she was thrilled that she was moving from a house or apartment in LA to a farm.
Yeah. Well, as my mom would remind me, on my way to driving out to Nashville, I drove the U-Haul and my mom drove my car with Stevie in it. And Stevie just projectile vomited all over the car on day one of the drive. So we got it cleaned, but it was like and then the AC went out. It was amazing for her. And so maybe Stevie was purging the cleansing aura of leaving Los Angeles. But my dog went from being a roof dog, they said in LA, she would always stand on the roof, to definitely being a farm dog. And it was the sweetest transition of life. And in some ways, I'm now realizing that Heartland is just a big love letter to Stevie. Oof.
I was reading an interview that you did around, you were alluding to the album that was based around, and when you say the hero's journey, I think you're talking about like the Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, that was
effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I'm kind of curious, getting back to this idea of maybe writing about things, maybe anticipating them. Do you feel like you were writing that as you were actually living it?
You know, I don't know. There's something really spooky is not the right word, but there's something really like other dimension about how songs are formed in my mind. And to put that more clearly for an interview, I read an interview with David Bowie a long time ago, and he said, I never know what I'm writing about when I write it. And when I read that, I felt like I had been given permission to do the thing that I felt was happening when I made music, which is that, like, so often in an interview, to no fault of the interviewer, they're like, how did you write this song? And that could look like, how did you come up with the idea, or like, how, like, what came first, the melody, the lyric, the instrument, like what came first? And there is an element in making songs where I don't know what comes first, melody, lyric, title, I don't know. And that's not a cop out answer. That's literally like, when I made Migration, for instance, I don't know where migration in my mind meant death. But when I wrote the first verse, I thought about my father who passed 10 years ago. And somewhere in the making of the song, and then recording the song, even though in my mind I did think about my dad, I listened back to the song and I thought to myself, this is a song about anticipating Stevie being gone. And I even talked to my friend who I wrote it with, Ariel Lask is her name, and she's my best friend. And I was like, this is what I think it's about, losing Stevie. And she's like, well, I think we were like thinking about your dad and Stevie, and maybe they both found their way into the song. And in the David Bowie spirit, it's like, maybe I don't know, and maybe that's okay. It's like leaving room for um the unexplained. I also remember, and I'm such a like fan of music, so I will quote and reference things, but I remember seeing the documentary for Coldplay, and when they were writing Fix You, there's like a clip of them in the studio, and they're like, lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. And somebody was like, what does that mean? And he was like, I don't know, but it feels good, And like, that is what we know to be that song. In the moment that he was writing it, somebody was like, what is that? And he was like, I don't know, but it feels good. Um, those moments are what give me permission to kind of leave music making in a space of the unknown. And I don't know, it kind of helps me also be grateful that songs come to me and come through me when I make them. And that's how I feel.
Do you feel like you are and have been a naturally self-analytical person?
I think I've been a naturally self-critical person. Like, I have been a really hard friend to myself, because I've struggled with like being bullied and being made fun of, and then in order to um give them a break, I just took all of that on and beat up myself. And in some ways, I think music is kind of me crawling out of my hurt and trying to heal my younger self. But also, I'm of the belief that I know nothing, and I'm constantly um learning, and so maybe analyzing is just me kind of reflecting. I inside of these questions that you're asking, I hear them, and then I let them ring in my body, and I'm like, I'm asking the questions of myself in real time.
Reading up on you, your husband's a therapist, right?
Yeah, he is.
And like my mom's a therapist. Among other things, like that was a really big part of why I put off going to therapy at all for a really long time. I'm like convinced that was a big part of it. And and I've been on dates with therapists before, and it's never really gotten past the first date or two. And I think that's probably a big part of the reason why. And I'm kind of curious, like, how being in a relationship with somebody whose job it is to be analytical in that way, whether that's had an impact on your own self-analysis.
A really cool question. I feel like I have a really good friend whose mother was a therapist, and she kind of becomes a therapist and asks questions of other people. So like maybe that is also falling in line with like you here asking me questions.
That's literally what's happening right now.
Yeah. But like I grew up in a family where nobody talked about their feelings, and feelings were bad, and really big feelings were scary and meant that people like ran away from each other and never unpacked them. So people are often like, oh, wow, you're dating a therapist. That must be hard. And I'm like, well, first of all, I know very much that my husband is not my therapist. That much I know. I have a therapist. Love her. But my husband is not my therapist. My husband is my husband. My husband is not my father or my mother. My husband is my husband. You know what I mean? So I'm really clear on that within myself. And then what I do get with a husband who is a therapist is that we both talk about things really clearly and with a lot of compassion, and I think I'm the luckiest person in the world because my husband is my husband, but I feel a little embarrassed saying that because it's like, because I wish for everybody to have a relationship where they feel seen, heard, and held. Truly wish for that. But let me also say, a relationship is not proof of life going well. Like, I didn't get into a relationship, I think, until I felt like my life had fullness, because two whole people make a wonderful pair and two half people don't make a whole. You know what I mean? So there's like definitely a song somewhere in there, but come back to me on the next record.
A little bit of math in there too.
Yeah. I feel lucky. Like, his love is never criticizing. There was something like today we were looking at a tree and he was talking about something and he was like, because the tree does this, and then he kind of stopped himself because he always does that with me. He's like, he'll talk about like, the truck has a piece that's like this and you have to do this with a truck, and I'm like, Gabe, no, I'm like gay, like I don't know what you're talking about. And before I could even say that today, he already knew that I was like laughing about that inside, because he was like trying to be like, what I'm talking about, how trees do this thing. And I'm like, Gabe, I know nothing about it, but will you share it with me? Because you sharing it with me is the greatest thing in the world.
That's it right there, because it's reciprocation is being able to get excited about the things that they're excited about.
Yeah. And love is the most beautiful thing in the world. And that, that is what I feel really lucky to have with my husband, is love.
I know you said he grew up in a religious household, and you growing up in a house where, as you said, nobody really talked about their feelings. You're obviously, as we're having this conversation, you're very intentional and you're very thoughtful with your answers. Do you think that How much of that is a product of you becoming a musician and becoming a songwriter?
I feel like my truth, and again, I'm going to give you another autobiography because it's like reading about other artists helps me feel less alone because um I read Bob Dylan's autobiography Chronicles Volume 1 sitting right there, and it was like when you're a fine enough singer, who can sing other people's songs, there's like plenty of songs to sing. But at some point, you want to peel back the curtain and find out what's there. And that to me was how I found my way to songwriting. Like I just watched a video of me actually at 9 years old singing a song I wrote like in a mall, and it's funny, and I may post a clip of it. I'm not sure. I haven't developed the courage to do it yet. But um the the part of songwriting for me came more out of trying to peel back the curtain and find out what's there. So um it wasn't because I thought I was good at it or because I thought I could do it. It was because I needed to figure out how to express the feeling inside. Um I remember my parents going through their divorce and how volatile that was for me, and it led me to my pen. Like it led me to my notebook, and then I went through like a breakup of my own around that time, and like that led me into a song. There was no like songwriting artistry. I don't know everybody's answer. Sorry, I'm gonna burp. That's what I'm gonna do first. I don't know everybody's answer for how they found themselves to being an artist or being a songwriter, but it wasn't confidence that brought me here. It was curiosity. It was who am I? Why am I why why do I hurt? And let me explore that. I that's the whole experience of what it means to me to make a record. And again, in the words of a conversation between D'Angelo and Beck, and I can't remember who asked who, but I recently shared it after D'Angelo passed, and Beck reshared it, and it meant the world to me. But one of them said, uh, every album I'm starting over, and the other one said, amen. And, that's kind of how I feel with every album. It's like the album is this exploration of life, and then a new phase of life begins, and I'm going to open the door and walk out into life.
Something that you were saying earlier really made me, it kind of cemented something that I was thinking about earlier today. I was reading something online and somebody was like, you probably don't know it, but like a certain percentage of the music that you were listening to is AI. And I, my response was, no, it's not. And for me, it's not AI because I think have such discerning ears that I can necessarily tell what isn't AI. It's because I, like you and like a lot of nerds who like music, are so obsessive with what used to be liner notes and reading memoirs or watching documentaries, and are just so interested in the stories behind the artists and the songs and the music, and it's that piece, and I don't know how to harness that piece, but that piece is what it's going to take, I think, to continue to really distinguish human-made music from AI for those people who otherwise maybe aren't particularly discerning.
Yeah, you know, I feel a bit scared about the power of AI in this current moment with no checks, no balances, and lots of people making checks that aren't the people who created the inspiration behind how AI does what it does. And I'm not going to beat the dead horse about AI, but I am going to beat the dead horse of humanity and be like, I believe that human beings desire connection and real connection more than they desire dissociation and deprivation and disconnection, you know? And I hope to walk a path of deep connection through art, you know? Whatever that looks like, I don't know, because it's a scary time where I just read about a song topping the country charts that's made from AI, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the call to action. If you care about music from somebody that you care about, it's time to let them know. And it's time to share that with your friends, you know, because we are I don't know, it sounds like a blockbuster movie where we're in the battle for the soul and computers are winning. But I don't believe that that's the end. I just believe that that's where we are right now. And I know, because I saw John Batiste play at the Opry, that seeing him at a space like the Opry singing the Star Spangled Banner was more impactful than any AI anything will ever be, you know? So I hope I can drop something with heart from the heartland into the ocean and touch people. That will be my mission. AI will AI, and I will do me. Period.
You can't choose your own trauma. You can't choose the hand you're dealt. You can carry each other, build a bridge and call it help. I know it's hard to see you crying, but your tears are the jewels that keep you shining. So willow, willow, don't let the river take hold.